Indeed. Welcome, folks, to News from the Pew. I think Steve had an issue or two. We'll get him back on a little bit. That's all right. I'm your host, Rick Barrett, the Armed Catholic. While we wait for him, there he is, Steve. Welcome back, buddy. I think they did Fauci get you? Looks like Fauci went after you, buddy. You go after St. Fauci. That'll be down on the interwebs.
The computer, what would you say, crashed.
Had incontinence.
Anyway, I'll go and put him back on.
Nah.
Potential future requirement for an additional boost or a fourth shot for mRNA or a third shot for J&J is being very carefully monitored in real time, and recommendations, if needed, will be updated according to the...
We could get lucky because the trajectory right now is going way down. And it very well may be that if you take masks off the kids in the next week or so, it's going to keep going down. But you've really got to be careful. You know, you don't want to say it's an absolutely wrong decision. It's understandable why people want to take masks off the kids. But right now, given the level of activity that we have, it is risky.
I love these guys.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to News from the Pew, where we take the news of the day. And while complaining about it, we want to present you with some solutions and insight as well. I am your humble host, the Armed Catholic, Rick Barrett, and I am joined by four of the most average so-so minds I could find on such short notice. So I'm very pleased to welcome my distinguished, for lack of a better term, panel. We have Steve, who has just robbed a bank or a Pizza Hut. I can't tell. We'll figure that out later on. We got our man Flaz from Kentucky hanging out with us. Ryan is hanging out with us as well. And Jonathan is keeping the free state of Florida as free as possible. So we are glad that you guys are able to hang out with us tonight. Got some really good topics. If you like what we're talking about, please subscribe, like, share, hit us with some comments. We always love to see what you guys have to say. And it's been a pretty big week. And first of all, being a former rugby player, always love seeing the haka being done, especially by the ones that can actually do it and not like the sub-rate ones when somebody, like a bunch of white kids try to do it. So it's actually...
Come on, then.
What? You ever tried to do the haka, Steve?
Yeah, I've done it before.
You have? Do it well?
Well, I'm probably not like the pros, but
when I played rugby, we couldn't do it. We tried once, and it was.
I know the old one. It's not this one. I know the was it the
yeah.
what version you would say?
No, don't even. But I'm glad you did because I couldn't. But so let's just jump right into it. The big story that's going around everywhere, secular news and into the world of Catholicism as well, because of the ramifications and what we see coming down the line more than anything else, is what's going on with the truckers up in Canada, our Freedom Convoy brothers up there in the Great White North. Specifically Monday with the enactment, or either the Sunday night or Monday morning, of the emergency powers by Justin Trudeau and his communist tiny tyrant government, and in particular the measures that they're taking and stuff that we've been called conspiracy theorists or whatever the case may be have finally come true in that regard. So let's take the first video clip you have, Steve. We'll take a listen to that.
This is about following the money. This is about stopping the financing of these illegal blockades. We are today serving notice. If your truck is being used in these illegal blockades, your corporate accounts will be frozen. The insurance on your vehicle will be suspended. Send your semi-trailers home. The Canadian economy needs them to be doing legitimate work, not to be illegally making us.
Confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information. And the actual follow-up is, I'm just wondering whether the bank accounts will be targeted of individuals who donated to the Give, Send, Go and the GoFundMe campaigns. Are they considered designated people under the Emergencies Act, meaning that their credit cards could be cut and financial services are targeting them as well?
Okay, so the names of both individuals and entities, as well as crypto wallets, have been shared by the RCMP with financial institutions, and accounts have been frozen, and more accounts will be frozen. Crowdfunding platforms and payment service providers have started the registration process with FinTrack. In terms of the specifics on whose accounts are being frozen, you now have the regulations. The financial service providers have those regulations as well.
Compared people who may have donated to this to the same people who are funding maybe a terrorist. I just want to be clear here, sir. This is really important. A lot of folks says, look, I just don't like your vaccine mandates and I donated to this. Now it's illegal. Should I be worried that the bank can freeze my account? What's your answer to that?
Well, I think if you are a member of a pro-Trump movement who's donating hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars to this kind of thing, then you ought to be worried.
Minister, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends. As you know, the theme of this annual meeting is Mastering the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I couldn't imagine anybody who could represent more the world which will come out of this fourth industrial revolution. It certainly will be a world, hopefully, not certainly, hopefully, if we take the right decisions, which will be a diverse world characterized by plurality. It will be a world which will combine significant investments into the future, into our soft and hard infrastructure, with fostering entrepreneurial activity, at the same time social responsibility. It will be a young world. It will be a digital world. Now, who could represent such a world better than you, Prime Minister? We are very glad that at the beginning of this meeting, you are talking to us to represent also a new, open Canada. I want to use this opportunity also to thank our Canadian constituency, which always has been a very loyal, very much.
Yeah, we got enough of Charles, the Bond supervillain that he is. So unfortunately, Fwazi lost the coin toss, so he's got to go first on all topics today. So, throwing it to you, my friend. Canada is pretty much done what every conspiracy theorist prepper has been warning about for years. They're coming after your money. They're coming after platforms. They doxed the people of Give, Send, Go. They hacked in, got the names of it. They didn't take the money or the credit cards. They got the names so they could bully those people. Hell, they're even threatening to take the dogs of the Freedom Convoy truckers if they impound the trucks. And everybody's favorite thing, the thing that was going to save us all, cryptocurrency. Number one thing that was named in there as well. Right before I toss it to you, disclose.tv this morning. The FBI here in these United States of Amazon is forming a national cryptocurrency unit. And who are they focusing on? Focusing on Bitcoin. It's all the secular things we thought were going to save us from the federales. It looks like they have us not dead to right, but they have a counter move for all these things. Gentlemen, Fawzi up first.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate that. I think we saw this in California back in 2008 with the whole Prop 8 situation, where they ended up doing the same thing. They hacked into those who funded journalists or those activists disguised as journalists, hacked into those who funded the Prop 8 against the sodomite marriages. And they ended up doxing those folks. So we've seen this before. I believe even 2010, I forgot who it was talking about the lockstep situation, to where if they're going to protest and against these fourth industrial revolution agendas by the regime, the first step is to cut off their funding and cut off their money. The problem is we've been so reliant on this system that they've set up for us, whether it may be their financial system or even their social media system. We're trying to fight the regime in their own system, and all they have to do is shut us off. And it's that easy. So this is an uphill battle. The thing about Bitcoin is it's almost impossible to freeze. It's one of the things. It's peer-to-peer currency. What they could do is the only thing they could do is they could scare folks by putting their name out publicly to be doxxed. But that's just the battle that we're going to face here. We're not dealing with people who have any principles or morals. We're dealing with folks who will do whatever it takes, scratch, claw, and bite to get to their agenda. And our job here is, this is a long game as well. I bought land. I got myself out of the city. I want to raise my children to be virtuous. And I think this is a long game, to be honest with you. And eventually, because we have God on our side, we're going to win. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to suffer well, because we are, and we already see that. Kudos to the truckers who are standing their ground. Hey, these are the people who weren't afraid to lose their livelihoods, sacrificing their reputation, getting arrested and having their accounts frozen. It's not going to deter them. I think they're going to stay there for the long run. We're just playing chicken with the regime at this point. It's whoever blinks first, they're going to throw everything at us. We just got to keep suffering and just keep standing our ground, because if we don't, they're going to bull through their agenda, which is their fourth industrial revolution, and make us all into robots, their little sheep. So, I was going to say is, Ryan had a good point last episode. We talked about this. He said if you can, get your money out of the system, and this is why a lot of times the communist and socialist systems, you had the citizens take the money under the mattress in cash, because they had to deal with this, freezing their accounts and stopping them from, purchasing food and things like that to feed their families. If you're able to do that, take your money in cash, that'll hurt their system. If enough people do that, it could hurt their system. But yeah, Bitcoin, they're going to go after the people who are sending money through transaction back and forth, but it's hard for them to freeze a Bitcoin account, mainly because it's peer-to-peer and no middleman. That's what they're afraid of. That's why they're going after it. So kudos to the truckers. Keep it going, guys.
Jonathan, your thoughts?
Well, essentially, what Fawaz was saying there, I agree completely. The big thing is, I think they're going after us in the same way that they would buckle. They would buckle under this sort of peer pressure. They're the sort of scaredy cats that would fold, tuck, and run immediately with something like this. So, we just have to show that we're courageous and willing to suffer for what's true, good, and beautiful, because they're not. They're obviously not. They're just looking to get ahead. So, if we're ready for that sort of fight, as these truckers seem to be, I'm impressed and I'm encouraged by what I see from them. Then I think we'll do well right off the bat. But the other thing is I'm a city man naturally. I like being in the city. My wife is a little bit more of the rugged outdoorsy type, but I think I've just realized that over the last few years that the writing's on the wall, and eventually, if we want to raise our families and have enough good, healthy food to eat, it's hard to see how we're going to be able to do that in the normal system. And that's probably one of the reasons why they're so worried about these truckers is they know that the globalist system, for instance, the Amazon sort of system does not work well if the trucks aren't moving well, So this is hitting them where it hurts. And I hope that the truckers can stay strong, and that those of us that have children to raise can find out something prudent to do in the meantime.
Steve, why don't you take a moment and let us know your thoughts, my friend?
Well, I was having my popcorn ready because I thought there was going to be a war to watch, but I got hosed on that deal.
Oh, no, it's still coming. Don't you worry about it. It got pushed off to next week.
Thank you. I was hoping for that. I was waiting for, at least prime time. I got done with the Olympics. Good grief, this thing's terrible. By the way, the reason why I did this is Vice did a article about how wearing pantyhose over your muzzle is much better for you. And I can get here and tell you, I can smell the popcorn, and the glasses were fogging up. So that didn't do jack for any of that. Give me a minute on the breath. But anyways, yes, the truckers. United States truckers are going to start March 1st, I think it is. It's happening in Europe. It's happening. Israel had a big, I guess they did cars. They didn't really do trucks over there. The problem is this is twofold. Yes, it's great that people are doing something. Better than nothing. Yay. Downside is it's going to hurt. We already got a shortage on food and supplies and things like that. That's not going to help that part out. They're playing into the globalist hands, my opinion, of basically getting rid of the industry. You said it a minute ago with the almost drones. You managed Amazon, and first thing I popped up was drones. They want drone delivery. They talk about that all the time. You look at the beginning of the videos from a year and a half, 2 years ago, they talk about just that. There's a graph. They want to get rid of trucks. There's a graph. They want to get rid of planes in the sense of commercial in the industry like this because of environmentalism, because they want to get the net zero or negative zero, etc. Bitcoin, it's going digital. Bitcoin PSYOP in a sense. Corbett has a great video talking about the Bitcoin PSYOP. I think that's actually the title of it. And just in Europe yesterday, or in England yesterday, they showed a gas station that's you can only use a QR code for it. So if you go up to it, you have to scan it, and that's the only way you can pay through it. Why is that important? Digital currency coming, digital ID. If you're not up to your jab, which is going to be, they just mentioned in the Veritas videos that came out yesterday that we're going to have it yearly, which we've all talked about before. It's not, with anybody with 2 working brain cells can see, that's coming. You don't get that jab, maybe your QR code you're not getting gas that day, or you're not getting food that day. So these are ideas that we in the USA probably haven't thought of. We're thinking of all these other things. Canada's doing it. Australia's people are doing it. You saw New Zealand people getting uppity. Where's the freedom-loving Americans at? The Super Bowl's over. What's the next excuse? Getting ready for college baseball in place of Major League Baseball? What's going to distract us? I mean, the stuff that's coming down the pipe is it's going to get ugly. I mean, the truckers are not going to win. The globalists will win this. We might win a battle, but the war is going to be an ugly one.
I have some thoughts on the why these United States of Amazon have not gotten uppity yet, but I want to get Ryan into this first. Reaction to the video, the idea that assets are being frozen, cryptocurrency is being targeted, the fact that the truckers sound like they were kind of ready for this, but this is the eventual escalation that we all knew was in some way coming. Your thoughts?
Like I said last week, it's a game of chicken, and Trudeau is trying to see if they'll blink. And so far, it looks like many of them are not. I guess we kind of have to view further to see how it's all going to work. There's a couple of things. I think most of what I would say has already been said in one form or another. So with the crypto, I do recommend, I can only echo Steve checking out that Corbett Report documentary, because Corbett wasn't trying to bash Bitcoin as such. It was just trying to point out the technology that it rests on is fairly neutral, and it could be used to create something like Bitcoin, which is more or less unhackable and peer-to-peer, or, I mean, not completely untraceable as we've seen, but certainly more difficult for the government to block or mess with. And then they could also produce a Fed coin type of thing, that some kind of central bank digital currency that also will be built on blockchain. And people hear, oh, blockchain. Why? Well, that must be perfectly safe then, and switch over to start using that. Except that then they will have all the backdoors and controls written into it, and they'll shut it down when they feel like they need to shut it down. And if anyone has any doubts about that, again, look at the fact that crowdfunding sites are being shut down. And they'll actually, I think this will become much like we saw with the January, the day following the 5th and prior to the 7th, where, so we can avoid the YouTube censors, where the FBI is going to the house of anybody that used their debit card somewhere in D.C. that wasn't from D.C. And the FBI was at their house asking them questions about it, even if they were nowhere near the protest that day, or the White House, or not the White House, sorry, the Capitol. If only it was the White House. But if nobody was near the Capitol, what possible reason could there be to investigate them? Just harassment, basic harassment, which leads to the next point. A lot of people have pointed out how Trudeau and this creature that's his that is his deputy there reading out this statement. Well, they supported Black Lives Matter, and Trudeau even marched with Black Lives Matter and supported them while they toppled the statue and called for defunding the police. And some guy even humiliated Trudeau by humping his head. I mean, during this protest, and that was all fine. Nobody cared. No Emergency Powers Act. They had no control over things. Businesses were being burned and looted in Canada as in other places. And let's not forget the phony residential schools story, which was all drummed up on the basis of evidence that turned out not to be evidence, actually. These mass grave discoveries, it turned out to be, well, actually, it's a lot of rocks in the ground, and it's really pet cemetery, But we said it was thousands and thousands of Native Americans in mass graves, and then none of that is to say that every single person in residential schools was treated wonderfully well. Obviously, that's a huge problem in Canada, but it was morphed into something so much more than it was, which resulted in assaults on churches and general lawlessness. No Emergency Powers Act. Nothing was done. And they know that. They know that we know that they know that they did this, and yet now they're reacting against the truckers. Why? Because they want to rub our face in it. We are in power, not you. And that's why they do not care. I mean, you can have all the tweets and all the videos or whatever pointing out the contradictions between BLM and this particular protest. You can point out all the contradictions in the news media of talking about how this protest, this really violent protest, where no violence is taking place, compared to, it's fiery but mostly peaceful protest with a building burning down behind the guy. They know. It's not a mystery to them. You're not enlightening anybody by showing this contradiction. They are purposely rubbing our face in it to saying, yeah, we could do this in broad daylight, and we have the power, and we own the media, and you don't. And that's essentially what's going on with the Emergency Powers Act.
All right, excellent. A couple more points on this. First of all, the reason is that we haven't seen these United States of Amazon truckers react is January Cinco. If my Spanish is correct, I'm married to a beautiful Mexican woman, so think on that over. I can't get it right. A and B, I'm still married to her. But January Cinco is the reason, because you've had people.
You mean say?
Siente? I don't know.
Say.
Fifth. Oh, Cinco de Mayo. That's fifth. Yeah. So the one after that. So,
right.
It's a good thing I'm this ruggedly good looking, because it definitely wasn't my Spanish that landed my wife. So that, but my point is that we've had people who Ryan pointed out were tracked down into their home for being in the DC area that have been in prison for over a year without trial. And I've seen videos of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Louis Gohmert and other representatives go to the prison where they're being held in Washington. And these prison guards are like, you don't have any authority here. You can't come see these prisoners. They've been held without trial. They've been held without their basic Bill of Rights, civil rights, whatever you want to call them, have been suspended and denied. So people are very worried that if you get crossed with the FBI, CIA, whoever it is, they're going to put you in jail, especially if you've been labeled a white domestic terrorist, which they were starting after the election in November 2020 to reorganize DHS and the definition of terrorism to essentially be a white supremacist in any way, shape, or form. So we see that too. If there is a trucker convoy, Steve, that's the dumbest thing they can do, because especially if they go to Washington, because they're waiting. The Capitol Police, who the only authority they answer to is Nancy Pelosi, they can't wait to have one of these insurrection incidents.
That's where they're good. They're ending at DC.
Yeah, well, I love truckers, man. They listen to my show on the Bear Brief and the Crusade channel. I love you guys. Don't be stupid and don't go there, because they are waiting for you. They're going to be armed to the teeth and they're going to be ready for an incident. And then it'll be Waco. It'll be Ruby Ridge. This is the U.S. government we're talking about here. They're more than ready to pop off a couple U.S. citizens here and there and be like, they started it. So definitely careful on that. And then my last point is, I don't hate people. I don't hate cryptocurrency. I don't hate Bitcoin. I don't trust it. I understand maybe it's because I'm not very smart, but the idea that putting your money into an electronic source, even if it is the safest blockchain-y anonymous thing out there, can still be shut off at the switch of right at a switch, and then you have no access to it. Right? The future is in the past for us, especially Catholics. The idea is to return to the land. Fwazi's done it. Other people have done it. Get out. The future is in food, silver, bullets, coffee, things, tangible goods. We have fallen prey to the god of technology that it's going to save us in one way or another. Oh, it's Bitcoin. Oh, it's this phone. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. When we have the playbook is in front of us. We are just so bold and arrogant that because we have microwaves and iPhones that we know better than those who have gone through this. Right? Fwazi said it. People, our aunts, our grandmothers, grandpas, what did they do? They stuffed money under a mattress. We used to make fun of them. Now we're doing it. So those are my thoughts. If anybody wants to react to those before we move on.
No, that's true. Yeah, I moved to the country, so you can eat a lot of peaches. So I just definitely agree.
When you said silver bullets, I immediately thought Coors Light.
Silver and bullets, Steve. Silver.
I didn't see the comma. I'm still recovering from pantyhose wear.
No, that's right. Those are some deep breaths, brother.
You just muted yourself.
Not a smart man. Silver and bullets. Silver, gold, whatever precious metals you can get your hands on.
Why are you drinking a silver can?
And yeah, that's right. Dollar Tree, baby. $1.25 tree. But in case anybody has any other thoughts on that, we're good. All right. Well, let's move on to our second topic here on News from the Pew, which this is an article from Fox News. Catholic priest incorrectly performs baptism on thousands by changing a word, making them invalid. The Diocese of Phoenix said that, quote, all of the baptisms he has performed from June until June 17th, 2021 are presumed invalid. And I'll just say this, and then I'll throw it to Fwaz because he's at the top of the order today. Stories like this scare the crap out of me. They absolutely do. And you know, we all, I don't like seeing them. And so let me just toss it to Fwaz. Your thoughts?
Thanks, brother. Yeah. When it comes to the whole truckers situation, there's justified anger, but this one goes beyond the justified anger, mainly because you're dealing with souls here in relation to eternity, rather than what's going on here on the earth and how we can fight the regime. My biggest issue with this is I got a lot. Number one, the older I get, the more I realize that you could actually pin the entire society into two philosophies. The first one is those who conform themselves to reality, and those who twist the fabric of reality to conform it to themselves. And unfortunately, what we've seen, and I'm not going to bash on any of the councils, of course. I'm not an expert at Vatican II at all, but the players at Vatican II, like Rhonda and those guys, were so concerned about false sense of community. It was almost like man became the center of the faith rather than God. And I've heard it plenty of times. I used to be a director of youth ministry at a Novus Ordo parish where the pastor was a huge Rhonda fan, and him and I not see eye to eye whatsoever. And his whole understanding of Rhonda is everything is based on community. Baptism is no longer needed to remove original sin and reconcile us back with God because we're born enemies, but it is just to welcome us into the community of the faithful. And changing the formula of baptism to we baptize, to me, it shows this whole understanding of false sense of community. You are conforming you're conforming reality to what our Lord wanted you to say, what the church as an authority wanted you to say as a priest, to changing it because you deem it to be, correct. And my problem is the people who are out there defending him is the same folks, Father, I think, Beck for CNN. The problem I have with this is the left does this in the secular world. What they do is they take a word, they broaden the definition of the word, and anytime somebody comes within the scope of that word, they throw that insult at them like racist. Well, we know who's been throwing the word rigidity every single day at us. And as soon as somebody wants to perform an act in the formula of what the church is asking them to do, that person is considered rigid. And if you go outside of that, now you're moving with the Spirit. The problem with that is you have no authority to do what you think that you're doing, which goes against divine instruction. So you're tampering and messing with souls here. And did somebody say it's ridiculous that changing a word changes the formula because the Holy Spirit, as great as she is, according to them, should just honor it because they're not bound by the sacrament. It's not about that. It's about the fact that you don't have authority to do what you're doing. You should just follow what our Lord demanded through the authority of the church and not make things up, not twist the fabric of reality to conform to yourself or whatever your false ideology is, but actually do what the church is asking you to do and conform yourself to it. If we all did that, the Catholic Church would be a lot better right now.
Well said, John.
Well, I'll just say that I was most upset by reading after I read an article from Not the Bee, the Babylon Bee's factual side, but it was really an opinion piece and a pretty ignorant opinion piece, as you would expect with someone who openly jokes about their Protestantism and so thereby already kind of confesses ignorance about all things Catholic. But I mean, they do bring up a confusion that even a lot of poorly catechized Catholics might have. It's like, what's the big deal about changing a pronoun? And you eventually have to just work your way down to the essentials with someone who asked that question in good faith. Let's just assume that someone might ask that question in good faith, and look at the Orthodox / Eastern or Byzantine form of baptism, how it's different. You know, it's the servant of God, and you say the person's name is baptized in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. It's required, except in a case of absolute necessity, that you immerse them 3 times, and you say the servant of God is baptized. But if you work it down as you can with most sacraments, you can find out that there's much more in common with the valid forms, if you will, than is not common. Actually, you follow the Eastern rite of baptism, you think this looks exactly like the traditional rite, with all kinds of exorcisms and blessings before the actual baptism. But in any case, it's because there's a primary actor. You know, there's one who's doing something. And so the thing eventually you're going to have to ask someone is, okay, so let's say you think it's goofy that we're making a big deal about changing the I to a we here. What about with marriage? You know, why don't we just say we, promise lifelong fidelity? But would you be laughing then? You know, would you make a joke of it then? Or even just to stick with baptism, at what point does something go from not being baptism to baptism? I mean, the word literally means in Greek, in the most used sense of it in the church, is to immerse someone. Okay, and usually it's understood that we're talking about water. Okay, so do you have to say any words? If so, what words are absolutely necessary? I mean, at a certain point, someone has to make a claim, and it's more because certain people just don't have the intellectual honesty to come through and say, okay, true. Once we get down to it, I don't know where to draw the line, but the church has drawn the line, at least for the Latin rite, and so the people that are mocking it right now, they won't let someone who knows something about the issue talk about it for several minutes in a row, because eventually then it gets down to it's a point of definition and clarity, and that's, as Fawaz was already hinting at, that's not what these people want. They don't want that sort of clarity that really defined the church back in the day.
Excellent point there. Let's throw it to Steve.
Yeah, you had one job and you messed it up. Back here, there was when I moved to the new parish I'm at now, they come out, what was it, about 4 or 5 months ago, a deacon did this too, messed up a bunch of baptisms. They sent to the diocese saying anybody got baptized by this deacon back in 74, whenever it was, early 80s. Please contact the diocese because your baptism probably wasn't valid, and please bring any video or evidence to go around with it. So unfortunately, sadly enough, this is more common than we wish it would be. I was just thinking, I got this book from some guy named Brian Grant. I don't know, might have heard this guy. Baptism by some other dude named Bellarmine. Some wackadoo out of Italy, I guess, from back in the Catholic days. Anyways, he has in chapter 3, it's on page 319, the form of baptism. It goes through like 7 or 8 errors. That, one was the first was of certain men who in the very time of the apostles baptized in the name of the 3 without a beginning of 3 fathers, or in the name of 3 sons or 3 paracletes. A second was Gnostics, who, as Irenaeus witnesses, baptized in the name of the unknown Father, in the truth of the Mother of all, and in the name of Jesus descending. There's some wackadoo errors that they have in here. Anyways, he goes in and just talks about how it's, the form is important and the errors that go with it. Again, stuff that the moderns today don't even think about picking up and learning. 4 pages on the importance of the form of baptism. Ryan could probably go into a lot deeper than I am.
Well, let's bring him in. Ryan, your thoughts?
Well, since Steve plugged my book, I'm going to plug someone else on here, if we can see it. Duranzo on baptism and confirmation. And so he is a sacramental theologian prior to Vatican II. So as he goes through it, he talks about the form and the Latin versus the Greek form and so on. I'm glad John talked about that, so I don't have to mention anything about that. But you notice they don't have the word I baptized. They have it in the passive voice instead, in the indicative mood. The servant of God is baptized. And so there's no mention of the minister, yet theologians have held, and it was defined at the Council of Florence as being valid. and most Latin theologians held it to be valid even prior to that. So Duranzo takes from this that the mention of the minister is not, the explicit designation of the minister is not required. All right, so and that's certain from the use of the Greek formula, as well as, you know, in ancient theologians and other things. So, but when the Latin formula is used, the word, although is it, you know, he makes a distinction here. So he says literally, ego, I. This is not essential in the Latin language, although in German, English, and French, the corresponding term is essential. You know, but anyway, because as he says, the signification is included in the term baptizo, because the ending there means I do it and nobody else does that. And so, but in vernacular languages, that's not the case. I mean, at least in his time in writing, I know some of the evolution in certainly in Italian, you can use the verb without, you know, without the definite article, and you'll be understood. But that word, that's necessary. Why? Because when you're saying the form, the Latin formula expresses the minister, which is Christ, through the ministry of the priest. But the priest is not the agent. He is not the principal minister. And if we go back a few pages in this particular text, he talks about the minister, which is, of course, Christ. And even though it's not necessarily necessary to express it, it's necessary that, you know, what you're expressing is that Christ is the one who baptizes, not the minister. And so likewise, you know, but when he does it, he's doing it in persona Christi. And so again, too, with the some of the Latin defenses against the Greeks during the times, you know, back 1,000 years ago, when they were defending their formula against the Greek and vice versa, you know, again, theologians had pointed this fact out, because the Greeks accused the Latins of Donatism because, hey, you're saying I, so you think it all depends on the minister. They said, no, I refers to Christ. Christ is the minister who is in that act baptizing. So this is why. So now, if we omitted, if Rome promulgated a new form totally contrary to our right, and that was like the Greek form or something where it's expressed in the passive voice, it would be perfectly fine, as long as we express while washing, clearly, you know, pouring water over the head at minimum, declaring in the name of the Father, the Trinitarian formula, right? If a priest on his own takes up the Byzantine use in the Roman Rite, it would be valid but illicit for the Roman Rite. It would be illicit. But if you change that, you know, the I to a we, you are changing the nature of the action. You are suggesting that the validity depends on we as the community are the ministers. You're expressing something that's heretical. So it's one thing to say that the mention of the minister is not absolutely necessary for validity. But if you mention something that's actually incorrect, now you have a different problem. And Rome has just defined it as, you know, being an error. And what's shocking, actually, it's not shocking at all. It really proves the rule. With the things that we've seen falling out for us, you have, you know, of course, Father Thomas Rees, FJ, right? You know, typical guy to come out and be as progressive and liberal and as non-Catholic as possible in the media. But you have other priests too showing up on CNN attacking the church. And it was just not too long ago we heard all about when trads are complaining about jailers of the tradition, right? What do we have? We have all these priests running around Twitter quoting Canon 1373. Which says that anyone who incites anger or sedition against a legitimate act of the Pope's magisterium should be, you know, punished with a just penalty, right? And the whole point of that canon is really to point out, hey, look, there's limits to your freedom of speech in the church. That's really all it's trying to say. And, you know, if you really stir up everyone, you know, to you know, resist or disobey a formal act of the Pope's governance, that's what that canon is talking about. Well, that's exactly what these guys are doing. Just as they did back in the 60s with Humanae Vitae, so they're doing it now. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. I guarantee you there will be a rash of liberal priests who will avowedly baptize, and then, you know, saying, we baptize you, just because to stick it to, how dare the church tell me how I'm going to do it? Because that's the whole spirit of the left. And it goes to prove the rule. They can do whatever they want. They can break whatever rules. They can ignore whatever documents, formal decisions from Vatican dicasteries, ecumenical councils. They can ignore them all, because as long as you're doing something that's lefty and liberal and progressive and hip in the church of what's happening now, it's always okay. But as soon as a conservative disobeys something that one of their friends does, or in this case, you know, an extremely liberal pope does, then, oh no, he's a schismatic. You can never listen to him. And that's the way it goes for the New Catholic Red Guards, is that the only thing that's ever allowed is the progression left and away from what is the proper church teaching. I'm not going to say from the right, because the right can have errors too. I mean from the truth. Whatever is away from the truth, that is always what is allowed, permitted, and promoted. Whatever is towards the truth, that is always despised and cast out for the New Catholic Red Guards that are the church's, so many of these theologians, priests, whatever in the church.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is a subject that is unfortunately politicized. And Fawaz said it right off the top. It's not about saving souls. It's about whose ideology is correct. And that's not what we should be dealing with here, right? We should be dealing with the salvations of souls inside the church. And it's quite frightening that people are like, I got to bring in photographic evidence that he said it right. And this is one job that the guy, this dude had, was to save souls, and that starts at baptism.
We're in a sorry state, because I am not in the slightest bit worried about the validity of my baptism, precisely because I was baptized as an Episcopalian and not as a Roman Catholic. Whereas if I was baptized as a Roman Catholic, I might be calling some people up right now.
I mean, every time I read one of these, I'm like, is mine? Do I need to go get water and do it myself just to make sure I'm all right on the back end? Like,
we got to get your wife to do it.
Yes, that's right. Maybe she'll do it in Spanish. I don't know.
Right?
Like you're there. But anybody else got any closing thoughts on that? For me, it just worries me because there's so many souls that don't even know or don't even think to question it, and so that's really the frightful part there for me. All right. Well, I guess
Rick, if you don't mind.
Actually, let's say this, because
Ryan.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I mean, he's done over 1,000 baptisms, but not a single person in the laity caught that and said, you're not doing it right, or went to a higher authority. This goes to show you we got to get catechized better. We got to catechize ourselves and our children so that we don't fall into this. When you change a single word, the theology is like that. You've got to distinguish. You got to have, they have to be careful with the words. And it's the same thing that happened. I think it was the Council of Nicaea, I believe it was, where they determined Our Lady of the as the Mother of God, mainly because they had to determine Christ being fully God and fully man. And Our Lady did not give birth to a nature, but gave birth to a person. So in order to have that truth that Christ is fully man and fully God, Our Lady must then become the Mother of God. These languages matter because when you distinguish these things, it gives a better understanding of theology.
Ryan.
One thing that's going to happen is a lot of people are going to start saying, "Hey, is my baptism valid now?" And so, should everybody just go and get a conditional rebaptism? In the old canon law, I can't remember what it said in the new canon law, but the old canon law, they used to have a line in there that I forget which canon it was explicitly, that said a priest would incur irregularity if he did a conditional baptism without cause. So a lot of priests used to be scared about doing any kind of conditional baptisms. But when you go to the commentaries on that, what they said is most priests don't have to worry about incurring irregularity for this, because they're talking about without cause. Somebody just comes up and says, "Hey, Father, just redo all my sacraments just to make sure." That's without cause. When you have something like this, where let's say you are in the diocese where this happened, and now you get a scruple. What if my baptism is not valid? This is actually a serious thing, because that would mean that my marriage is not a valid marriage, and not a Christian marriage anyway. I don't have any other sacrament validly. That's the consequence of not having a valid baptism. So it is something to take seriously. All right. I mean, theologically, then people ask, well, am I going to be damned if I die and my baptism is not valid? Then, the answer is, this is why, in theology, they teach on things like baptism of desire and baptism of blood. In this case, this would be a legit baptism of desire, so long as you had right faith and contrition and love of God. If you didn't have those, now we might be in a little bit of problem. So we'll start working up your act of faith, hope, and charity. But otherwise, if you have a scruple, if you have a serious scruple, and you just can't get it out of your head, and you have a legitimate cause for it, then it's worthwhile. Call up your parents, when I was baptized, do you remember what the priest said? Don't lead it to dispose their mind. Just see if they can recall on their own how the priest did the form. And if that's all good and you're still kind of troubled, if the priest is still alive, visit with him. Say, hey, Father, there's a lot of discussion about this today. How did you say my baptismal form? I need to know. If you got a recording of it, check out the recording. And then once, and if none of those can give clarity and you are still in your conscience worried that your baptism might not be valid, then go talk to a priest and then work on it. But then don't forget a conditional baptism. That brings in those consequences that you should also have a conditional confirmation and likewise, a sonatio of your marriage, right? And that's once that happens. So, or remarry, whatever it happens to be, that the marriage is actually done. I don't even know what the process is for marriage in that point. Maybe somebody else does. They can jump in, but that's what it's a serious thing. You can't just run in and get everything redone just because some priest somewhere. The reason this is being brought to light is because there are all these people with invalid baptisms, and God wants it to be fixed. That's why he's bringing this to light. And he's not going to allow this situation to perdure in the life of the church where people think they got valid sacraments and they don't. People are going to confession to priests that were ordained, and turns out they weren't ever priests at all because they were never Christians, because they were never baptized. That's not a situation God wants. And he may, because he will in his mercy provide for your salvation if you are disposed to it and live truly in accord with the gospel. And he will make that work if he wills your salvation. But you can't assume it. He doesn't want to see that persist. That's why this is all coming to light now.
And parents, pay attention to see what the priests are saying. And when you're in the confessional, maybe Father might slip up and not do the ego te absolvo part. I've heard that once and say, Father, you forgot that part. Oh, my bad, I forgot. It just slipped my mind. Sometimes that happens. And if these guys are messing up baptism that bad, you may want to pay attention to what's going on during the confession. Not to yell at them, but just say, have it in your mind. Pay attention. Don't be zoomed out. You shouldn't be anyways into Lord of the Rings movie coming out or whatever. But focus on what's going on and pay attention. Yeah.
Exactly. Does anybody else want to jump in? John, you got any final thoughts or no?
Well, I mean, just that I think Fawaz brought it up too. These are the sorts of things that get people concerned about language. So maybe there is a silver lining, like with the Theotokos, the statement there at the Council of Ephesus, because before maybe saying Christotokos, it seems like a minor point, like, okay, Christ bearer versus God bearer, what's the big difference? But if by that you intend to exclude from the conversation that Mary gave birth to a divine person, then that's a heretical statement that you've made there. And so that's when even things that otherwise might have been okay become problematic. So yeah, it opens up a whole bad can of worms, and we don't want those worms.
No, we definitely do not want those.
They will be eaten on eagle's wings. There you
on eagle's wings.
No, no raising up. None of that. Because every time that song is sung, some lady is just reliving her high school choir days, and she belts it. And you're just like, lady, I know you're trying, but please just stop.
We gotta find it. I know there's a video of Rick belting it out one day.
Oh, when I do it though, it's magical. Don't you worry about that. It is. I've had people say it's an out-of-body experience when I sing. I don't know what to take from that, but we'll go from there. I'm gonna take it as a compliment. But you're watching News from the Pew. If you like what you're hearing and seeing, subscribe, like, share, get the message out, get the word out. We are here every Thursday to bring you news and our comments on it, and also solutions and the way forward. And we're happy that you're hanging out with us. Let's move on to our last topic today. So this, I don't know, this thing was pushed out today. It was from a person on Twitter, because that's where all the drama happens. It's an event apparently called, quote, The Called and the Chosen, unquote, a live virtual evening of reflection with Jonathan Rumi, if I'm saying his name right. He is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, in the Chosen show, and Father James Martin. So I guess it's August 21st, so it's a couple months from now. And I've never watched The Chosen. I've never seen it. I know that there's a lot of problems with it. That's because it's created by Dallas Jenkins, who is the son of Jerry Jenkins, who wrote the Left Behind series. And I mean, that's problems with that overall. But the whole thing with him, this actor, palling around with Father James Martin, I'll just throw my thoughts out and then we'll throw it to everybody else, is that this is apparently a very popular series. I see people talk about how amazing it is and how great it is and whatever. But his association, it's kind of like it would be on the same level if Jim Caviezel was palling around, like when he's palling around with Mel Gibson, we're like, yay, and how awesome that is. But it's another bit of validation for your regular lay Catholic that worries me. And because unfortunately we have to deal with popular culture and the fact that this is within popular culture and it is being absorbed and being used by somebody like Father James Martin to continue to push his heretical message really worries me, because Catholics are not good with dealing with popular media anyway. We're always trying to like incorporate ourselves into it instead of standing back and saying, hey, we're Catholics, we're awesome, this is our culture, this is what we have. Always trying to like needle nose our way into what's cool. We're like Dr. Evil essentially, from Austin Powers. Like, I'm cool too, fellow Catholics, and it just brings more of that stuff in when we see this situation. And so that worries me. And then also the drama that has unfolded from it as well between different people. And it's more Catholic infighting and bickering that it really is difficult to stomach. But I'll throw it to Fwaz first. Your thoughts on this whole situation?
I don't have any. I've heard of the show. I haven't seen a single episode. So I'm going to pass it on to the next person.
All right, that would be John.
I only watched the first show and just some of the, I mean, I teach sacred scripture for a living, so some of the faux pas were enough to, have me wrestling around too much in my seat. My wife said, well, this is not a peaceful evening, watching a movie when you're getting all angry about it. So had to cut it off after the first episode. But I'm concerned in any case. I want to find out more because I'm a convert and practically the entire rest of my family is full of Protestants, and they're all almost to a man and woman watching this show and asking, you sure you don't want to watch more? So I want to find out what's going on. And I know that in any case, the one thing I do know already is that Father Martin is a really bad influence, because he would give in a different, granted in a different area of morality, but still he would give the impression that it's okay to remain in the sin that you're in right now. In Protestantism, it's a sin against the faith, right? I mean, it's heresy. But with his, it's a moral choice to consider licit, actually, to persist in one of the sins that cries to heaven for vengeance. So I don't know. I don't know enough right now, but I want to find out more, because I know to all of my rather devout Protestant relatives, it's this will be on their radar. So I need to find out more.
Mm-hmm. Steve.
Like
sands
Twitter
through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives.
Oh, good heavens.
That's what every time I see a debate going on, or he said, she said, or this going on, or the poop slinging on Twitter, I immediately think of the sands through an hourglass. These are the days of our lives. Yeah, because I see one friend said something about this friend. I got to defend this friend. I got this friend. This guy said something about the Pope. I got to go here. This guy sucks. This guy said this. And it's just, does anybody care about coming to Satan anymore? I look at that going like, I've never seen Chosen. Don't care. People have asked me, send me messages. Still don't care. Not going to watch it. I'm too busy. I did watch the Super Bowl. Come at me. I grew up a Bengal fan. So Bengals. This has been 89 since they were in the Super Bowl. I watched it. So I remember when I was 9 watching it against San Francisco and Joe Montana ripping my heart out. I even watched the halftime show. Loved every minute of the halftime show. That's what I'm popping.
That's cry room material right there, buddy. That's
some
cry
people's
room
kids.
What are you, a 40-year-old woman banging out to 50?
I saw 50 Cent look like he's a $2 bill. He's blown up.
He $1.50 now, at least. That's inflation. Hey, that's inflation right there.
I don't know how he hung up so well.
I mean, I can't make fun of anybody because I'm at least $3.50 if we start
with all the heart attack and with all the myocarditis going on with the athletes. I'm shocked 50 moved that much because of how heavy he was.
I don't know because I didn't watch it. But anyway. All right, Ryan, what do you got? We're done making fun of Steve. Go ahead.
I have not seen The Chosen. I have no intention of seeing The Chosen. I would much rather watch a murder mystery show or something else, frankly, than something that makes that really becomes a parody of sacred scripture. And it's one of those things. There's very few movies that seem to do it well. It's one of the sad things that Catholics especially have not engaged in pop culture. There's a handful of groups that do. I know some of them. And especially for the production of sacred works, there's so many amazing things at our disposal, but there just doesn't seem anybody to make it work. And the same thing with Saints movies. There's so many very terrible ones. I did not like the Fatima movie, for instance. I thought it was way over dramatized. The makeup on Our Lady and the kind of the production values I felt were very low. The intentions were probably very, very good. So I don't want to mock anyone. It's just the effect was unfortunately very poor. So I just, and I find that it makes it hard because I would much rather be consuming Catholic media. Like if I had in the little bit of time I've got, I got a couple hours free in a week where I can watch something, and it's like Star Trek's gotten so bad it's got to be reruns, or there might be like an old, a nice murder mystery show like Castle or something like that I enjoyed, although it's not for everybody, especially some of the things in it because it's very secular. But the writing is very good, and I enjoy it. If it's with a little bits of time going to engage in TV, I don't want to watch bad media. That's why, I just looked at The Chosen very briefly. I said, nah, I don't have time for that. And I still don't. So I think, but people are looking for something. And the fact that people watch this, even though it is lackluster in terms of, especially in its presentation of scripture, it shows that there's that desire there. And you look at what The Passion did. And I have certain critiques in The Passion in terms of, presenting so much mystical material I see why it was done. It makes sense at a certain level. It didn't hurt the film at all. I mean, certainly it's the only movie in the history of the box office to go through its run and then a month after being very low in the charts, go right back up to number one. There's no other movie that's ever done that. And just in terms of the power of the film as a true work of art, people keep going back to it. People keep watching it. So it's one of those things that has all the potential if you do it right, but there's just seems to be, for some reason, you can't seem to get the people in there to do it right. And you look at, and of course, so now this fellow's going on something with James Martin, who also can't seem to do it right as far as theology goes and anything else. But I guess it's a sign of the decadence of our age in general, where you have Father James Martin, who is a Vatican communications official, and he has met with the Pope. The Pope will meet with him, wouldn't meet with Cardinal Zen, wouldn't meet with Cardinal Burke, but he'll meet with James Martin. And as bishops in this country are banning him from their diocese, the Pope's like, oh, come on in, I'll make you a Vatican communications person. What's that telling us? It's telling us that all the powers that should be in every single place are supporting. They don't have a vision for the presentation of the faith. They don't have any real concern, actually, for presenting things that are beautiful and enduring and good and true and beautiful. If I didn't say that already, they have this desire instead for the mundane, the blasé, I'll make everybody feel good. And I think feelings play heavily into some of the current debates as well. I mean, when things get to a certain point on Twitter where I know that this group, this outfit or whatever is going to drag me down, I'm just going to block it. And then I'm going to block it, and I'm going to stop talking about it too. Because I think it's cowardly to talk behind a block unless it's absolutely necessary to respond to something. But two, it's just the reason I blocked is to get away from this person, not to keep them going living rent free in my head. So so the same thing with the Twitter drama. If it's that bad, if you're angry when you get up and you're looking and you have to say something, why don't you just block and forget about it, or mute that person and forget about it so you never have to see it again. Life's too short. It's just not worth the time.
Yeah, I'd have to say deleting Twitter off my phone was the best decision I ever made in my life, because I'm barely on it now, so I don't really worry about any of the stuff that goes on there. So we have that. And just coming back around to the fact that Catholics are so weak society-wise that we're just willing to accept whatever is presented in front of us, as far as, oh, well, this show, it's got a gay character, it's got this, but it's nice here, and it has some nice feelings. It really reflects that we live in a matriarchal society. I know they try to tell us it's patriarchy, but if you look at how everything is controlled by feelings and trophies, and everybody needs to feel good on it, we truly live in a matriarchal society right now. And that's where all this stuff comes into play. And everybody's right. We have the stories. Catholicism is the story of Western civilization. And the fact that Bug Hall, I know, talked to Kennedy Hall a while ago about movies and how to do these kinds of things, and the fact that there's all kinds of influence, whether it's Protestant or secular, and it's very hard unless you're somebody like Mel Gibson, who had to fund the entire Passion on his own. A lot of guys can't carry that, and a lot of people don't want to take that financial investment. And I don't know if anybody caught this. There's the trailer for the Mark Wahlberg, who's a professed Catholic, very vocal, prominent Catholic, Father Stu. I haven't even seen this trailer. I don't really have a lot of hope for that either, because even though I think he's doing it for the right reasons, I think there's way too many outside strings and people pulling things and saying, well, that's a little too Catholic, or that's a little bit too this. Unless you want to go outside the mainstream, like a Mel or somebody else, and you can't really hope to have something that really shows the good, pure, and true, beautiful, because there's a lot of negative influence in Hollywood, in secular productions, that don't want those stories to be told. And it's a fight for, like, for me, there's a show called The Middle with Patricia Heaton, another Catholic that I don't know if you guys, it's a show called The Middle. It's about her and her husband and her 3 kids living a middle class lifestyle in Orson, Indiana. I think it's hysterical. It's not very bad. And that's what I watch right now. I didn't watch the Super Bowl, Steve.
Freddie Circuses.
Something wrong with you.
Well, I've watched the NFL in 3 years. I haven't watched the NFL in 3 years. I used to, I'm a very diminutive person, but I used to be into football, basketball, baseball, all that kind of stuff. As soon as they went woke, I was done. Ryan
and I talked about this probably a year
ago. Last time I watched football, Joe Montana was the quarterback at the Super Bowl. That's the last time I watched football.
There you go.
Ryan and I talked about this with the movie Black Panther, because I know we both liked it. And remember, Jason Whitlock on his show Fearless talked about how if you watch it, it's 100% matriarchal.
Yep.
We couldn't do jack without asking his sister or mother.
Yep.
And they were in charge. You had the women's only group, the fighters.
Yep.
As great as until you brought that up, I didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it to a certain extent, but I was willing to say it was enjoyable. It was harmless kind of entertainment. But then the more I thought about it too, there are things like that emotional thing. And also, your space MacGuffin, and it's a bit pandering, actually. It's like, we want to show this radically advanced Black society. Well, that's fine. But the way they did it is, well, we have this, MacGuffin space, super special space metal that they gave this element, and that's what made us all better. So again, Black people couldn't do it on their own. They've got to have the magical space rock in order to get ahead, and then they don't help anybody else. It's the way that story is constructed. I know there's a lot of echoes to legitimately that's how it worked in the comics to a certain extent, but it wasn't so blatantly patronizing, I thought. And
I'm getting a call. We're now called racist. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brad.
Excellent. Well, you got to be careful with the source material because the last 10 years, Marvel and DC have both gone so woke that
I heard they're going woker.
Well, no, they are.
Yeah, they're pushing the gas on it, even as the comic sales continue to plummet. I
don't care about
comics in about 30 years, but the comic sales continue to plummet. The movies continue to do worse and worse because they have the numbers. They know, right? They can say whatever they want. They don't have to report what they get on Disney Plus or on HBO Max or wherever, but those numbers are plummeting in terms of people watching this, especially like the TV show material they produce, which they mean to be part of the canon for their expanded Marvel universe. It's disastrous, and it's all woke. It's all women running things. Like the Hawkeye show was one of the worst examples of this. You got a character not terribly well fleshed out in the films. Awesome character, got a big bit of comic book lore. They took a character from a short run comic. It had one run because nobody wanted to buy it because it was annoying. I mean, so this Kate Bishop character, and they basically make it the Kate Bishop show with special guest star in his own show, Hawkeye. And this seems to be a pattern. You get in the directors, the writers, the showrunners, zero. And I mean zero bupkis in writing credits in any history, producing comic book movies, and no credits in producing any movies. Why? Because the studio already planned this stuff. They already had this stuff more or less in this direction. They'd already even filmed the fight scenes, and they just basically hired directors now to fit the stuff in. And of course, they have no writing credit, so they have no experience. They can be blackballed very easily. And so they're going to do whatever they're told to get their credit on some big name thing, and thus be completely compliant with the studio. It's the same thing with getting Rian Johnson into Star Wars. You get a two-bit director with no credits, hardly no decent film to his name, and you hand him a big anticipated sequel in the biggest franchise pretty much that secular Hollywood has. It's Star Wars, which I was never a super Star Wars geek or nerd or anything. I did like the original trilogy. I hated the prequels, and of course the Disney sequels are even worse because it actually makes those George Lucas prequels look good. They're so bad because of the same model. You got the matriarch Kathleen Kennedy running that thing. And then you hand off, you get a director in there who's going to be compliant and do exactly what he's told. They produce a garbage movie that has to, I got to watch my language here as I get passionate about this stuff, but has to essentially dehumanize, belittle, and demasculate traditional heroes. So like Luke, they reduce Luke Skywalker to be a cranky old man, drinking nursing alien breast milk on this island, right? That's how they've completely humiliated him to every possible level. While they're building up their Mary Sue Ray that can never do anything wrong, ever. It is always perfect and magically knows how to do everything. These are the new characters they want us to like by destroying the old characters.
Terminator. They killed John Connor right off the bat in the last one.
Yep.
They can't do anything to, and they can't create new characters that are going to draw people, and even just in terms of secular storytelling, they can't seem to do it. And actually, I did recently on this channel a show with a couple other people about Lord of the Rings, and the end of our little show was about where that direction that's going in, and it's largely the same thing. And there's this wonderful Tolkien quote that it's in the books. Evil cannot create anything. It can only destroy that which has already been created and is already good. Yep. There's something to that effect. And Treebeard says it in Two Towers to Pippin when Pippin's not sure what exactly Ents are going to do against Isengard. And he says, well, you've seen trolls, right? Well, the enemy made them in mockery of us because evil can't create. It can only destroy and bastardize what is already good. And so the same thing with pretty much all of Hollywood. It's not enough to create woke franchises and intersectional feminist stories because nobody will go to see it. They have to destroy, or like Freud says, you have to slay the father. That's the idea that permeates the woke intersectional feminist culture.
Well, I mean, Disney's very good. The old joke was, what's in every Disney movie? The dad dies off, or he's not even there. He's never existed in any of them previously. And Steve mentioned Terminator. And you can think of any new franchise that exists. They all have the pattern of taking down the patriarch and establishing this this matriarch in whatever shape, way, and form. A lot of that money is coming from China because China's trying to re-educate and make sure that these United States of Amazon continue to be in strife, continue to be, because a matriarchal society, I'm sorry, it's a weak society. It's an absolute weak society because it's a perversion of God. God has the patriarchal society. It starts with St. Joseph, who our Holy Mother, our Holy Mother and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ were subject to St. Joseph. So we had that perfect setup with the family, and that's been bastardized and perverted and destroyed. So we can have these people talk about the future is female and all this other kind of nonsense. And it isn't good storytelling. It isn't good storytelling because there's no truth in it. And so it's really sad to see all of that go forward in that regard. So does anybody have any final thoughts on the subject before we move on to our saint of the week?
I would just say that it's also, I think, subliminally, at least, an attack on Western civilization.
Yep.
And that's because the only fiction that has ever thrived for millennia and millennia, fiction, so I'm not talking about sacred scripture. You're talking about Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and then, effectively you've got the Aeneid, and those things that are just classics that people come back and fall in love with over and over and over again. That, and if you want to bring in a few of the other Far Eastern or Middle Eastern narratives that are essentially stories that are very similar to that, with a figure who's willing to sacrifice all, a male figure willing to sacrifice all, and the lady who also in a certain heroic sense is willing to take the backstage and serve in her proper role. So it's an attack really on some of the greatest things that Western civilization's ever given us, and that really served as the formative elements for so much of the Greco-Roman culture into which our Lord was born.
I wasn't feeling safe with this conversation, so I got some dreadlocks. Yeah.
No, you know what? You're ready for the halftime show. You're ready for the halftime show 2022. You're ready. I mean, if you don't pass out right now, dude, I don't know how you're breathing through all that. That is
very carefully.
I mean, I'm having trouble.
I'm building up my immune system to the insanity.
Maybe. So let's move to our saint of the week right now. Fwaz, your saint of the week.
My saint of the week this week is actually going to be parents, and more specifically the parents of San Francisco that went around and got those leftist crazy board members kicked off of their school because they were teaching their leftist agenda, and they wanted to take back their school system, which was great. That's my saint of the week, is those parents. Keep it up, parents.
All right, John, your saint of the week.
I'm gonna wow, Fawaz stole the words out of my mouth, except I'm gonna go with parents in their large numbers taking their kids out of the schools and homeschooling them. So their bravery to do something that is really hard. It is hard to homeschool, and the more children you have, the more difficult it can become. But they're doing the heroic thing and taking on their primary obligation to not just procreate, but then educate, raise those kids in the faith. So I was seeing just an article that described the incredible increase in the numbers, even from last year, not just from 2020 to 2021, but now 2021, 2022, the numbers are even bigger. So again, congrats on the parents who are doing the hard thing there.
Steve.
I'm sticking with sports. Michelle Tafoya.
Nice.
She retired from ESPN. Was it ESPN or ABC or whatever?
They're all owned by Disney.
Yeah, they're all owned by the same. She retired from 11 years of doing it to go help run the gubernatorial candidacy for, I can't remember his name. I can't pronounce it right, for Minnesota, who happens to be a black gentleman with a good family, and she's been called a racist because he's a white supremacist because reasons. He's going into the GOP as a black man, and yet he's a white supremacist. They are running her they're throwing her under the bus, backing it up forth. And you got to see some of the stuff I saw on Twitter with calling her out and saying how bad of a racist she is for what she's doing, which, again, she quit her job of 11 years to, as she said, I want to do something for my country and for my family. Act locally, think locally. She's getting the grinder for it.
Ryan, your saint of the week.
I haven't really been paying attention to a whole lot of news because I've been doing a lot of pre-Lent, and so just kind of getting focused on that. So there's not a whole lot I've got, except the only thing I can think of is that, amongst with the Canadian truckers, there's a good number of them who have seen where things are going, and they see if it's not stopped now, then we have to, and they've been willing to sacrifice and take on the threat, because they knew, I'm sure, that the government would probably respond in this way, because that's what petty little hysterical whiny tyrants do, people like Trudeau and such. And so I guess there's so many people that are putting everything on the line, and that continue to be out there, even though they're facing major criminal penalties and certainly the loss of their livelihoods, to try to do what they think is best to save, and have still remain nonviolent. So I guess that would be at least.
Look at those terrible people. There's a mouse out there.
Look at this.
They should all be killed.
We should all want some French fries and some gravy, eh? It'd be great. All right, my saint of the week is former NBA center Enes Kanter Freedom, who actually changed his name to that, simply because I'm not going to call the guy a martyr or any of this other stuff. He's been very outspoken about the genocide of the Uyghurs, and because he's Muslim in China, he's very outspoken to the fact that Nike and all these companies and the NBA takes money from China and they kind of just ignore everything else. He was actually cut. He lost his livelihood being an NBA center. So he has actually put his money where his mouth is, losing his income to protest and to speak out for something he truly believes in. And so that a lot of people won't do that. And I give him a lot of respect for putting up.
I understand the consequences of my decision. And one of the consequences of my decision was not going to Australia, and I was prepared not to go. And I understand that not being vaccinated today, I'm unable to travel to most of the tournaments at the moment.
And that's the price you're willing to pay?
That is the price that I'm willing to pay.
Ultimately, are you prepared to forego the chance to be the greatest player that ever picked up a racket, statistically, because you feel so strongly about this jab?
Yes.
Good for him.
I do.
Wow.
Pursuing the good. So if you haven't read On the City of God, we're at the point in the history of civilization where I think, I'm just rereading it myself now. I'm on book 21, so it's 22 books long. I think we're there where you're gonna read St. Augustine's On the City of God, and you're gonna say, "Wow, he called this, about 1600 years ago." So give it a perusal. If you've never read it, you have to read this. It's one of the foundational works after sacred scripture, On the City of God by St. Augustine. If you haven't read it, you have to read it if you're a Catholic.
And it's not that long. You can do it overnight. It's not piece of cake.
Fwaz, your virtue of the week, sir?
Virtue of the week is going to be fortitude, which is the cardinal virtue. But under that, I'm more specifically going to talk about patience, which is to suffer evil well. Because right now we're going to need a lot of patience, more specifically because in order to suffer evil well, you have to detach yourself from all these things that would make you buckle. So more practical way, for example, if you're not too pressed with time, you're at the grocery store, to kind of put yourself in a situation where you're going to be more patient. find the longer line rather than the shorter line, and to check out. Just to put yourself in that position, sort of microwaving something, use the stovetop, kind of prepare you for Lent. I was going to say patience is going to be, because if we don't learn how to suffer well, whatever comes our way that we're attached to, if we don't detach ourselves from that, we're going to conform whatever that is onto us. So, for example, if we're watching a movie and it goes against the sixth and ninth commandments, or there's blasphemy, a lot of times we justify the entertainment and not shut the movie off because now the entire thing is bad, because vice is a single defect in its totality is no longer good. We then subject ourselves as the what is it called? As the measure of truth. But if you learn to suffer well, and the last thing I want to say is Saint Alphonsus in his book Uniformity with God's Will talks about this monk who was visiting the monastery, and when he got there too late, he was walking there, got there too late, and everybody was asleep, and he didn't want to bother anybody. It was snowing, so he just laid in the snow. And then the next day they found him, and they said, why didn't you wake us up? He goes, oh, it was fine. I just laid there. And as the snowfall was coming down, I just pretended that Christ was throwing snowballs at my face. He just turned it into a wonderful gesture, and he was just suffering well because he didn't want to bother his brother. So patience is definitely an important one.
Excellent. Steve, your final Catholic thought for the day?
I'm doing this thing on lecture on the Holy Face, and one of the books I'm reading. The writer of the biography of Sister Mary of Saint Pierre writes that Saint John Chrysostom speaks of Saint Didymus as having greater faith than all the patriarchs and the apostles at the time, because they got to see him in somewhat of a glory, or like Peter in glory, whereas Didymus saw him on the cross in the worst form he could possibly imagine, crucified next to him and dying, and he still had faith to believe that he was the Christ.
Yeah,
that was cool.
It's very, very. Ryan, your final Catholic thought of the week.
Fasting is a virtue that we've lost very much in the modern world, and abstinence also, the distinctions between them, but most especially the ancient tradition, which is related in various books of various authors, East and West. And in the ancient tradition, we have where you basically go vegan during Lent, and so this, as it developed, especially in the East, but also in the West to a similar extent, with the West just had more, what's the word I'm looking for? Dispensations from the rigor of it. But starting, this coming Sunday, Sexagesima Sunday for us in the East, that's Meat Fair Sunday, farewell to meat. And that's where, carne vale actually is what that is, vale, carne, to flesh, that is to meat. And so that's the root of the word carnival, right? Which might seem odd to people at first, but you said farewell to meat. So this coming Sunday is when abstinence from meat would begin, and we're not even at Lent yet, right? And then the following Sunday, Quinquagesima, in the East, that would be Cheese Fair Sunday. And although because of calendar differences, it doesn't always overlap for us between those in the Latin rite and the Eastern rite, but at least for the Orthodox anyway. So then Cheese Fair Sunday is when you're saying farewell to dairy. And then the next day is Pure Monday. And all the rigors of the ancient tradition, you would go 2 days without eating. And then on Wednesday, after pre-sanctified liturgy, you would consume a meal that was just vegetables. And if you're really keeping the full rigor of it, you wouldn't cook it either. And then, or bread or what have you. Then again, Thursday, you do the same thing. Friday, then you would eat after pre-sanctified liturgy in the evening. Saturday and Sunday, you'd get the use of olive oil and alcohol back. And then and then the next Monday would just be a straight regimen through the rest of Lent. 1 meal a day, no meat, no dairy, no fish, no eggs, no olive oil, right? No alcohol. And so you would continue that through the week. Saturday and Sunday, lighten up until Holy Week, and you repeat what you did in the week preceding the first Sunday of Lent. So it is extremely rigorous. It's one of the reasons why the springtime iconography has things like chicks, Easter eggs, because you didn't eat eggs during Lent. Right, and certainly in the Eastern Church, there's so many traditions with eggs, and they're given as gifts and so many things. It's also when you hatch chicks, and it follows naturally the progression of nature. You come on winter, you're eating a lot more meat and a lot more fats because that's what is in your store, making it through the winter. Then you send it upon Lent, and you're not eating eggs, so you're going to those fertilize and reconstitute your crop of chickens for the year. And so hatching chicks in the life of springtime, and also the life and the ability to feed your family going forward. Right? There's so many things about that. Now, in all the books that relate the ancient traditions, they also relate the tradition commands nothing. It commands nothing to be given up. Christ is the ideal who fasted in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. And that's the ideal we're trying to get to. And so the rigors of the ancient fast are things that we take on. And especially today when there's almost nothing positively commanded, especially in the way of fasting, in terms of, Good Friday and Easter and
Ash Wednesday.
Ash Wednesday. So whereas just even as the 1917 code, fasting was every single day. So we got to think about that and realize it is worthwhile to take on more. And even Sunday, you still abstained. You just didn't fast on those days. Except the Easter Church, I think, fasts the second Sunday of Lent. It's the only time they ever do it. Mm-hmm. But and people will balk at that. No, Sunday is like totally free. Not in the tradition. That's the way it's developed. Now, nobody says you have to do that. But consider the rigors of this ancient tradition and what you're willing to take on. And if you think it's too much, work with your spiritual director. But giving up meat is one of the biggest, most obvious, most easiest things to do every single day of Lent. Just stick with that and already and look at the fruitfulness that's going to come about spiritually.
All right, it's time for everybody's favorite part of the show here on News from the Pew. Time to put somebody in the cry room. So, Flaz, who goes in the cry room for you?
I think his name is Father Beck, the CNN guy. The CNN priest was crying about this whole what's the big deal about changing the form of the baptism type thing. So I'll put him in the cry room. He's a modernist. Put him in the cry room.
I didn't think he was going to be the first pick in the draft.
Yeah,
I did not think that.
You're talking about Father Edward Beck? That's the guy, Father Edward Beck?
He's a CNN priest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what his first name is.
Let's see. I think it's Shash. Yeah. I think if you let's see. I don't even know how to do this, so whatever. Here we go. Share this guy right here. That's awful. Yeah. Stop sharing. I'll put myself in the cry for that nonsense. Yeah.
That guy.
That guy, Father Edward Beck. He's a guy. He's the one going on saying it's ridiculous to the blah blah blah.
Yeah. A lot of obvious for him. Yeah. A lot of obvious for that one.
Father Edward Beck, you're in the cry room. Jonathan, who you putting in the cry room?
Well, because I love comedy and they do a lot of good stuff. The Babylon Bee folks from their so-called factual site there, Not the Bee, for their mocking of the Catholic response to the baptismal crisis. They should have at least invited a Catholic to come and, rant about the situation instead of betraying their own ignorance there. So sad to do it, but they deserve it.
Babylon Bee, you're in the cry room. Steve.
I was not thinking he was going to be on the board. I'm going JT in Canada, Justin Trudeau, but because my backup was going to be somebody else.
To see, as we're seeing virtually as the months go by, other groups that can be involved, and seeing it in children is really quite disturbing.
When you say other close contact, give me some examples.
Well, for example, if the close contact of a child is a household contact, perhaps there will be a certain number of cases of individual who are just living with and in close contact with someone with AIDS or at risk of AIDS, who does not necessarily have to have intimate sexual contact or share a needle, but just the ordinary close contact.
Sounded familiar today.
Everyone has AIDS. AIDS, AIDS, AIDS.
Somebody's got to know that one.
I do. We got
I'll go with JT in the cry room.
That's Ryan, who you putting in the cry room?
Actually, if you could come back to me in just a minute, because I am in the similar boat as Steve. I had Father Beck on my list, and so, but I'm the runner-up. I just need about a minute to find it.
All right, fine. This pains me, but I gotta put Fwazi in the cry room.
Whoa!
Fwaz in the cry room, and here's why, brother.
We got Inner Circle.
This is the Holy 40 Project on Instagram. You know what the Holy 40 Project, which I recommend you all go follow, the Holy 40 Project has refused to follow the Armed Catholic, despite the fact that I have followed you for a month and I can't get a holla back. I can't get anything from you, so I gotta put you in the cry room. Come on, man! I just want to be acknowledged. I just want to be seen. So I put Fwazi in the cry room.
I got you.
And Ryan can be Father Beck.
Sorry, Fwazi. I love you. And it's only because I love you so much that I have to do this.
I got you, brother.
Okay.
Right after this.
Yes. All right. Ryan.
All right, I am ready. So this week, as everyone knows, my Twitter handle is Tolkien Scholar, self-appointed. Because there's in the wake of everything, there's so many people coming out I'm not like a incredible brain on Tolkien. I don't know Elvish. I never went into that element of the lore, but I've read the entirety of the Silmarillion, Lord of the Rings, and Unfinished Tales, and so many things several times. And so it's a hobby of mine. It's something that I've enjoyed when I have the time to do it. So now you have all these people, that are being promoted in the media as Tolkien scholars. Now, there was one legit Tolkien scholar, Tom Shipley, and Amazon fired him. Tom Shipley, you've seen on every single documentary on Tolkien. If you've ever watched any such documentaries, he's written books on Tolkien. He knew Tolkien personally. He knew Christopher Tolkien. He truly is a Tolkien scholar. So I am putting Mariana Rios, also known as Witch Queen of Angmar by her Twitter handle. And so so she is the new Tolkien scholar that Amazon has promoted in place of Tom Shipley. So here's her tweet. So if we had the Rings of Power, their first teaser trailer reveal, which was awfully long for a teaser trailer, a minute long, and it left quite a bit to be desired, even by people that aren't necessarily offended by so much wokeism. And so she's the new Tolkien scholar. So she's been running the assault on Tolkien enthusiasts, people who love Tolkien, who have legitimate complaints about the things they're coming out there. So here's one that's been up for a minute, so you've probably already read it. Here's another one. And this is the most asinine thing that I think I've ever read. This is our Tolkien scholar, Witch Queen of Angmar. In The Hobbit, Gollum is described as dark as darkness. What is that supposed to mean? And yes, I am wondering here about the limits between the metaphorical and the racial. And she's trying to intimate so much about that it's okay that they're introducing new original characters who violate the lore of Tolkien's world, because hey, look, Gollum's described, and of course here's a little incidental tip. It's just like when the new race trolls will say orcs are like black people. It's like, wait a minute, you are the one suggesting that orcs are like black people. You're the one who's saying black people are like demons, whereas we are like, it has nothing to do with it, buddy. So maybe you're the racist. And a similar thing here with Gollum. It has nothing to do with race. It's about the effects of sin. Ultimately, that's the analogy. And so much it's, and she goes on with the basic types of things there. So Mariana Rios, self-appointed Tolkien scholar, who's actually a gender studies grad. She is the current scholar that Amazon is relying upon for all of its Tolkien information. So that can tell you how bad the coming, unless they change course in light of the reactions, how bad Amazon's woke version is going to end up being.
It's also an example of matriarchal society, how they fired a man to put in a woman, and what was their first thing to do? Feelings. Everybody needs to be equal nonsense there.
And it's not fair to the actors and actresses either. I don't want to mock them by any kind of unfortunate names. They've been shoehorned into a narrative because of the color of their skin. And they may very well be talented actors and actresses. I don't know. And now they've got their chance. And now because they've been shoehorned into something just to tick a few diversity boxes. And I think it's really unfortunate for them too. So I don't want to, and I think I could even, as much as it doesn't cease to be a problem, but I could forgive, putting in a black elf or a black dwarf with a lady with no beard, which is contrary to the lore in both counts. I could overlook that, even though it doesn't cease to be a problem, provided you are actually faithful to the lore and told a good story. And based on the trailer, they're trying to shoehorn as much garbage as they can, elevate every woman in a higher place, knock down any powerful men in it. Like I'm scared about what they're going to do to Gilgalad, really. So in any event, they might still course correct. And so I'm going to, fingers crossed that they pay attention to what people are saying and make some changes. But given Mariana Rios, I'm not so confident of that.
Wait till you see that the orcs are going to be white. Y'all laughed. You notice how they didn't show the orcs in the trailer. I'm just saying that'll be the ultimate triumph of this entire thing if they make like the orcs whiter than me, right? Like Casper the Friendly Ghost. And they'll probably have swastikas and Confederate flags too, just to throw the cherry on top. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with us on News from the Pew. We are done. And if you like our show, you like what we did, please like, share, subscribe, spread the word. And we look forward to seeing you next week. For Fawaz, Steve, Ryan, and John, I'm Rick. And we'll talk to you next time. God bless.